keep using this word, I keep talking about these animals, but what are they actually? Lemurs are a type of primate, which means they have those primate characteristics like grasping hands and feet. They have those forward-facing eyes, and they have fingernails on the tops of those fingers and not claws like other mammals. They are considered prosimian primates, which means pre-monkey. So they are the oldest type of primate. They branched off from that evolutionary tree before monkeys, before apes, before humans. So they have those characteristics in common with us, but they also have some unique characteristics as well, like those wet noses that we don't have, but other mammals do. There are about 110 or so different species of lemur, all different shapes, sizes, colors, like I mentioned. You can see some of that diversity just with these 3 species here. That is an eye, a black and white ruffed lemur, and a blue-eyed black lemur. All considered lemurs, but all different individuals and species. They are found only on the island of Madagascar, so it's really, really important, like I said, that we conserve them in the wild on the island to make sure that we have them for generations to come. Oops. Madagascar is a really big island. It's the 4th largest island in the entire world, found right off of the eastern coast of Africa, and there is a ton of biodiversity on the island. If you put that island on a map of the United States along our east coast, it would stretch from the southern edge of Maine down to the northern edge of Florida. So really big size piece of land there, and lots of different ecozones within that land. So you have a tropical rainforest, you have a dry forest, you have those limestone rocky outcroppings, you have a spiny desert, and pretty much everything in between. That gives species that make it to the island a really good playground. They can evolve and to live in all those different areas, which gives us the diversity that we see. We call those animals that are found only in one place endemic. So lemurs are an endemic species in Madagascar. There are also lots of species of chameleon, of insect, of palm tree that you can find only on the island of Madagascar. So there's a huge amount of endemism happening there. And that's due to the natural history of the island. It's been isolated from mainland Africa for about 100 million years. So that's a really long time in geology. It's been in that space all by itself. So when an animal or a different group of plants, seeds, or insects make it to the island, they can diversify and live in all those different areas, making it so cool. There is also, unfortunately, a lot of poverty, malnutrition, and deforestation in Madagascar. Right now, there are about 24 million people that call that island home. So a lot of those people aren't making enough money to support themselves, to support their families. About 3/4 of the population makes less than $1.90 or so per day, and that's not necessarily enough to live on the island. So our conservation projects, specifically the SAVA conservation project, which is what I'll talk about a lot, that's SAVA. It just stands for the area of the northeastern section of Madagascar. So that SAVA project is specific to one region in Madagascar, but is working primarily with the Malagasy people, with the people who live in Madagascar. We obviously want to protect the lemurs. We want to keep them as a resource for us to learn from, to learn about for generations, but we also want to make sure that we're helping the people first. People in Madagascar aren't going out of their way to clear forests out of spite. They're not trying to harm their native wildlife. They're just trying to clear forests to grow rice or to grow crops or to grow cash crops that they can then sell to make money. So figuring out the root causes of these problems is a big project that the SAVA program is working on. Why are people harvesting these animals? Why are people clearing these forests? And can we address those root causes in a way that's really helpful for them and not just coming in as outsiders and telling people how to use the land that they've lived on for generations? Madagascar has a lot of really cool insects, specifically for Bugfest here. We have a lot of really awesome insects. There are about 100,000 different species of insect that can only be found in Madagascar that are endemic to the island, including this really cool giraffe neck weevil over on the left. This is a male giraffe neck weevil, and you can tell because he has that giant long neck. Females don't have that, but are highly sought after by those males who will use those really long necks to physically fight each other. So they will be on a leaf or on a branch or on a twig there and swing those necks at each other. The male with the longer neck, the male with the stronger body can knock the competing males right off of that branch and have that access to the female. So really, really cool species found only in Madagascar. There are also lots of varieties of millipedes, of centipedes, of butterfly that can be found only on the island of Madagascar. and this guy over on the right, the Secundry, who we'll talk about a lot later. So remember this little leafhopper, he's also called a lantern bug in Madagascar, because he's going to be very relevant to our conversation as we go. I'll pause here for a second. Does anybody have any questions about Madagascar, about the Duke Lemur Center, the work we're doing in Durham, or over across the world?
So I don't see anything in the chat, but Anna, do you know how long Madagascar has been separated from the mainland Africa so that there would be this sort of dramatic evolutionary explosion?
Yeah, about 100 million years. So really long time. Lemurs have only been around, primates have only been around about 65 million years. So they're older than all of our direct ancestors.
Excellent. Thank you. Don't forget, folks, use the chat.
Use the chat. Otherwise, it's going to be me staring at my screen the whole time, and that is way less fun. Now we talk about insects and lemurs and their intersection. So insects are a highly sought after food source by most of our lemurs, especially some of our nocturnal lemurs, our smaller lemurs. These are two nocturnal small lemurs that we have at the Duke Lemur Center. The gray mouse lemur over on the left with that mealworm sticking out of her mouth, and then our fat-tailed dwarf lemur right in the center of the screen. The gray mouse lemurs are about 4 inches long, and our fat-tailed dwarf lemurs are only a little bit bigger, maybe 8 inches or so. They will eat insects in Madagascar. They get mealworms every day at the Duke Lemur Center as part of their balanced meal. Usually smaller primates will go after those insects because they're awake at the same time those insects are, but they are still going to supplement their diet with fruits, vegetables, flowers, nectar, seeds, things like that. And that's true for our lemurs as well. They get their daily dose of mealworms or waxworms, crickets and moths every so often, but they're also getting a balanced meal of vegetables, fruit, and then a dry primate chow that we give to all of our lemurs just to make sure they're getting enough nutrients throughout their day. There is one species of lemur who will eat mostly insects in Madagascar, and that is our friend the aye-aye. Usually larger animals like aye-ayes, but also like anteaters, have to have some special adaptations to be able to get a lot of insects. Eating 1 or 2 mealworms in a night isn't going to be enough to sustain you when you're a pretty big animal. Anteaters have those long sticky tongues to get out as many ants as they possibly can, and our aye-ayes have a lot of different features as well. So here are some images. This is Winifred right in the middle. She is our newest aye-aye. She was born just this summer at the Duke Lemur Center. And then the other 2 images are of her mother, Fadi. So aye-ayes have a lot of really weird features that put together make a very strange animal, but one that's really good at hunting bugs, their primary food source. In Madagascar, about 80% of their diet can be made up of insects, and they hunt for those insects by moving throughout the forest. And then they have that really skeletal looking middle finger you can see in the image of Fadi reaching towards the camera there. That skeletal middle finger taps on wood really, really quickly, and then those giant bat-like ears can listen to see where that wood is healthy, where that wood is hollow, where that wood might have nice tasty grubs hiding just beneath the surface. And aye-ayes have really sharp teeth. They have 2 teeth on the top, 2 teeth on the bottom, like a rodent. They can chew right through that wood or that bark to get at those insects. And that finger, as if it wasn't already weird enough, is on a ball and socket joint like our shoulder. So it can go into that hole that they've chewed, rotate all the way around, and scoop out all of those nice tasty insects hiding out. Lemurs at the Duke Lemur Center, our aye-ayes especially, will get food in sort of enrichment and puzzles that they have to solve. All of our aye-ayes get food inside a bamboo log, like you can see with Fadi there, or inside a wooden box, or for our older aye-ayes that maybe don't have teeth that are as sharp, just inside of a paper bag or cardboard box. So we should have a video here on the next slide of one of our aye-ayes using her tapping finger as kind of a spoon to scoop out those insects within that bamboo. So you can see her, she's chewed a hole through that bamboo, and now she's using that tapping finger to scoop out those mealworms that are hiding just beneath the surface. A very efficient insect hunter. All right, and then transitioning a little bit more into conservation. Insects are eaten by our lemurs, of course, but also they They are not the only primates that eat insects. Humans can also eat insects. As we've seen at BugFest, we've had a lot of conversations about eating insects. These are all examples of talks that just happened yesterday, talking about how insects can be such a good food source. They don't need as many resources as other livestock, other protein sources, and are more accessible to a wider group of people around the world than maybe some of our other more traditional sources of protein. That is especially true in Madagascar. So talking about how our little friend, the Secundry, who I mentioned earlier, is helping to protect lemurs in Madagascar. Secundry is an insect that has been eaten in Madagascar, both the larval stage and as the adults. So the adults have the wings here on the left, and the larvae don't have those wings. So in conversations with people who have tried Secundry in Madagascar, they maybe prefer the larvae just because they don't have those crunchy wings to contend with, but I have been assured that both varieties are equally tasty. Secundry are a really important food source because they are native to the island of Madagascar, so you don't have to worry about importing the seeds or importing the livestock themselves and figuring out ways to keep them in your area. They are already found there. So our conservation project, both the SAVA project with the Duke Lemur Center and some other conservation organizations, are figuring out different ways of attracting those Secundry bugs so people can eat them, so people can grow them, can raise them, and then sell them. So we have a picture in the middle here of Dr. James Herrera. He's the programs coordinator for the SAVA Conservation Project, and he is posing with some of the women in the village who are selling those bags of Secundry. So that's a really great way to help alleviate some of that poverty in Madagascar. You have people who are able to grow enough food with the Secundry to raise those crops that the Secundry call home, and then they can turn around and sell those for a profit as well. There is a huge problem in Madagascar with malnutrition, especially when it comes to children. So having more Secundry, having more protein sources is always beneficial. And these Secundry insects also have the double benefit of their host plant being a food crop itself. Secundry are attracted to bean plants, but they live on those bean plants without actually harming the beans. So if we give people seeds, if we figure out ways to irrigate their community gardens or their individual farms, they can keep growing these bean plants, the Secundry are attracted, and they have multiple food sources for the price of one. So you have those beans you can eat and harvest, and in between the times that the beans are ready, you have these larvae, you have these adults that you can fry up and keep as a food source as well. Like I mentioned, people in Madagascar aren't going after lemurs out of spite. They're not burning down forests just to clear the land. They are trying to feed themselves, to try to support themselves, support their families. Lemurs are hunted as a meat source, but generally only as a last resort in places where there are no food options, where people kind of don't have any other choice than to turn to the forest themselves. That's a really great region for the Secundry projects to work, because those are regions that have places where you can grow crops that attract insects, places where you can up those Secundry, and people are looking actively for other options to help preserve the lemurs. Having healthy forests full of lemurs is really great, both for us as tourists and for the people who rely on money from tourism to support themselves, to support their families and communities. So at the end of the day, everyone wants nice, healthy families. They want those healthy children. They also want to make sure that they have a good, strong forest. And having these conservation projects, having these Secundry is a really important way that people are helped in Madagascar while also helping to protect the lemurs as well. And that's technically all I have. Like I said, we are a little bit limited right now in terms of our in-person programs, so this is a great time to reach out to us, to connect with us on social media. If you are thinking about questions later, if you don't have a chance to get them answered here, feel free to message any of those social media accounts. It's just Duke Lemur Center on all of them, and someone is usually around in the next day or two to go through those questions and answer them there. Otherwise, put your questions in the chat now so we can discuss them.
Excellent stuff. Love a good awkward lemur face.
Yes, that's Miss Agatha showing off of those nice eye rodent-like teeth.
Fascinating. She's gorgeous.
Yes, the cutie.
So let's see. Let's go back. How many types of lemurs do you have at Duke right now?
About 15 different species.
15 species. Excellent. There you go, AK Archer. Aside from humans and environmental risks like deforestation, what is the biggest threat to lemurs in the wild And what predators do they have?
It's really just humans right now, actually. So lemurs, like I said, are the most endangered group of mammals. About 94% of all lemur species are threatened or endangered. So humans, definitely deforestation. There are native predators, so things like mongooses, things like fusas. Fusas are specifically evolved lemur hunters. Essentially, they're great tree climbers, large birds of prey, but generally those wild animals kind of exist in equilibrium with the lemurs. So they're picking off maybe smaller lemurs or lemurs that are more common, like the little mouse lemurs. And the fusa is actually also endangered. So kind of everything is working in balance, and then people going in are kind of messing with that balance a little bit. So humans, primary threat for sure.
What lemur species are hunted in the SAVA region?
I'm not sure specifically in the SAVA region, but in general, the shafak are hunted often because they are the largest lemur. So they're very visible. As you've seen in these images, lemurs don't really have camouflage. They're not hiding in the forest. They have bright white fur, high contrast fur. They've never really had to evolve to be hidden, so they're pretty obvious to see.
This is a good question. What percentage of people actually eat the secundry? And are they only eaten in that region?
They are not only eaten in the region. So they're eaten pretty much everywhere that they can be found in Madagascar. There are some other insects that are eaten as well. I don't remember the number specifically. I don't know that they've actually studied how many people. Secundry are really interesting because people know that they can be eaten and they know that they taste good. But we don't really know anything about secundry as any animal. We don't know its host plant. We don't know anything about its life stages. We don't really know anything about these insects. So it's really exciting from a scientist standpoint because you have this important food source and a lot of unanswered questions about it.
Oh, interesting. So a lot of research that needs to go into understanding.
Yep, a ton of research for sure.
Hayden, Hope, and Hadley Sullivan want to know, how does Duke acquire their lemurs?
All of our lemurs were actually born either at our facility or at another human care facility. So we don't have any lemurs. I think with one exception, we don't have any lemurs that were actually from Madagascar originally. The exception being our oldest lemur, Miss Indora, who is about to celebrate her 37th roughly birthday. So we haven't taken any lemurs from Madagascar since the early 90s. All of our lemurs were born at the Duke Lemur Center. We also work with a lot of different zoos and organizations to do a species survival plan. So pairing up lemurs based on the genetics of the individuals to have nice healthy babies. And then we'll kind of move our lemurs around as needed to make good pairs, to make good lemur parents.
Oh, good question. Why do you think there hasn't been investigation into these bugs previous to now?
There's a lot of animals in Madagascar and a lot of really, really interesting species that aren't found elsewhere. So I think the priority with the secundry has definitely been, can we eat this? How do we attract them? How do we get more people eating these insects? And less so the life stages. When you have insects like those giraffe weevils that are so striking, so obvious, so interesting, kind of those researchers are going there. And also, if you're in Madagascar as a researcher, you have all those lemurs. So lots of different options of things to study. And we just need more time to get to everything, basically.
Have any other insect species been considered for human consumption?
Yep, there is projects in Madagascar, in the capital city, to raise crickets for human consumption as well. That's more of a farming style. So buildings, warehouses converted into raising crickets specifically for human consumption. They also sell cricket flour, both for people on the island to use to up their protein intake and to sell to make money to support those communities as well. So other insects are definitely being considered. Secundry is kind of just the most visual example right now.
So of course, here in the States, we have a particular squeamishness about insects for human consumption. We don't have insects on our menus regularly, just about anywhere. There's a few people who buy like cricket flour off the internet to make cookies with every now and then. But that's sort of the limit of it, right? Do you see wide adoption in Madagascar? Like if everybody knows they're tasty, is everyone eating them?
Yeah, I would say it's not a last resort food. it's a food that people eat when they have it, when it's accessible, and it's not, you don't have that cultural stigma around it so much as we would have in the United States. So it's not like you see people and they're like, oh, they can't afford to eat chicken, so they're eating Secundry. It's like, oh, they have Secundry over there, good for them, maybe I'll go over and share a meal with them. So you don't have that same cultural stigma against eating the insects, which is really awesome, right? We want people to be in support of food crops that are really beneficial for both them and the animals. And if we have stigma around food, then let's put that stigma around hunting lemurs, which is definitely the case. So using kind of those cultural backgrounds to support the lemurs as well is really important.
So what actions does the Lemur Center's conservation programs take in Madagascar to promote insects over lemurs?
Yeah, so right now it's a lot of community gardens, a lot of just conversations with people about what food crops they can grow, what food crops they would like to be growing, different ways to grow those crops. So not necessarily Secundry specific, but growing the beans that they attract. Yams and sweet potatoes is also another food project working right now. Those are food crops that are really easier to grow than a lot of others and provide huge amount of calories in less space. So figuring out ways of irrigating community gardens, getting people excited about their own gardens, getting people excited to share food, to grow food, and figure out the best practices in those different regions. Obviously, what you're doing in a rainforest is very different than what you would have to do in a dry forest. So that's why the project is region specific, mostly because it's really hard to have a catch-all. We couldn't have the same conservation work happening in Maine that you would have in Florida. So same thing in Madagascar, focusing on that one region, just because best practices are going to be different as you go into different areas.
Do people have to compete with lemurs for insects?
I don't think so. I think the little mouse lemurs aren't necessarily going after the Secundry in the same way.
So you have to fence off your plot for insects in order to keep the lemurs out.
Right, exactly. You might want to make sure that your gardens are protected from some of those lemurs that like to eat those fruits and veggies. But generally, the competition is not for the insects themselves.
So they might come for your beans.
Right. Yep.
All right. Good question here. What type of education have you acquired to do what you do?
Great question, and one fresh on my mind because I just graduated last year from Duke. So I was a work study at the Duke Lemur Center. So I took classes and then kind of helped out in the education program over there on weekends or as I had breaks in my schedule, and then graduated with a degree in biology and evolutionary anthropology, so studying primates. And then after I graduated, did research for a little bit with some other primates, and then came back to lemurs the beginning of this year.
Oh, nice, nice. Now let's see. D. Hawkins wrote an undergrad in biology, PhD in entomology or primatology. Well, not to work in education at the Lemur Center.
Unnecessary. Yeah, so I love the conservation work being done. I love the research work being done, but that is not where my passions lie. So there's all sorts of different things you can do if you love animals, if you love talking about animals, if you love learning about animals or saving them, lots of different fields you can go into. So definitely pursue your options and don't think that you have to go through one path. We have all of us are coming in with very different backgrounds. So really cool to work with a group of people that all love lemurs, but all work with them in a really different capacity.
Yeah, definitely. I know some of the folks at the Lemur Center too, and they have biology degrees, undergraduate degrees, wildlife ecology, I want to say, I used to know folks who were like pre-med at their colleges. I worked at the Lemur Center and my undergraduate degree was in history. So you can find lots of paths to working with lemurs and working in conservation in different ways. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Oh yeah, cool. I know. Yeah, definitely evolutionary anthropology. It's a cool program at Duke anyway.
Yeah.
I only took one evolutionary anthropology class during my time at Duke, and it was really hard. So
I wanted to maximize the time I spent with the lemurs specifically because that's such a unique resource at Duke. And evolutionary anthropology, I think I went My first year at Duke, I wasn't yet working at the Lemur Center, but I think I swung 3 free field trips just because different classes were like, oh, we're going to go to the Lemur Center next week. Okay, I sure am. So different ways to get exposure. And now that we're doing the virtual programs, you don't even have to be local to Durham, that you can come on a virtual tour with us, can do Q&As with our experts, with our conservation director. So if you have specific questions about conservation in Madagascar, you can sit down and talk to James himself and get those answers. So different ways that we can access kind of a broader community than we can when we're actually physically open.
Can young people volunteer at the Lemur Center?
Yeah, so we have some programs, especially in education, for junior docents, so high schoolers. When we have tour groups, when we have open houses, sometimes we can't be everywhere as staff or as volunteers, so we need some help rounding people up and talking to them about lemurs. So if that's something you're passionate about, keep an eye on our website. Obviously, we don't know what our future holds. We don't know what schedules will look like. Hopefully next summer we'll be able to open up for tours, and so that's when those education volunteer opportunities will come back as well.
So if people wanted to learn more about what the Lemur Center does and what you're offering, how can they get that information?
Yep, so you can go onto our website, which is just lemur.duke.edu. And then if you're specifically interested in programs right now, same website, lemur.duke.edu/virtual.
There you go, everybody. Go sign up for a virtual tour at the Lemur Center.
Yes, you'll get to see my face again.
There you go. All right. Any last questions? Drop them in the chat box now. Anna, what's your favorite thing about being a part of the Lemur Center?
I love that everybody, like I said, cares so much about the lemurs and cares so much about the lemurs in different ways. So you have people who are really focused on what they eat, and you have people who are really focused on providing the best enrichment for them to keep their minds active. And then you have people who are really passionate about conservation. So seeing how the end result is all the same, but everyone's sort of inspiration to get there is really different. It's one of my favorite parts.
All right, everybody's saying thanks in the comments. Who did your lemur art?
This was done by Buzz, Borealis, and Pixis, who are red ruffed lemurs. Ruffed lemurs are also great artists because they have really fluffy tails, and they get those tails in the art and get it all over the canvas.
I know Pixis and Borealis.
Yes.
I remember those two. This was done by a black and white ruffed lemur. This was done by Hebe back in 2016.
Nice.
I think that's right. Did I write it?
We also have virtual painting experiences happening now too. So if you're inspired by lemur art, want to pick out your colors and species, that's also a virtual option happening now.
Oh, super cool. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in to our program. I want to remind everybody who has joined us here that we still have more BugFest programming going on. There's a couple more programs today, I believe, and then programs all day tomorrow. So visit bugfest.org, sign up for the programs we've got going on. You don't want to miss any of the cool stuff, cool experts that we're chatting with during BugFest. You can also visit bugfest.org in order to pre-order your so popular BugFest t-shirt. These things are basically collector's items. Some people will have BugFest t-shirts for every year that we've done this, which is like 25 years now. So this year it's special because the whole thing is virtual. We're doing t-shirt pre-orders, which means you can choose just about any color you want. So bugfest.org for all of that information. Again, thanks to Terminex and BASF for their sponsorship of BugFest this year. And I want to remind everybody that if you're local to the Triangle, or not maybe, but you're coming into the Triangle, the Museum of Natural Sciences will be opening its doors to the public again beginning Tuesday, September 22nd. If you go to the museum's website, you can get all the information on how to get your free timed reservation so that you can come visit us, as well as read about our cleaning and safety protocols to keep everybody visiting us very safe. If you're there Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock, I'll be standing right outside to welcome you into the building. So if you visit us and see me walking around the building, say hi from a distance, and we'll be glad to welcome everybody back. Thanks, everybody, and take care. Stay safe.